everyone, and welcome to Once Upon a Time at the Oscars.
The show that takes you through every Best Picture nominee from 1927 to today.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Ryan.
Have you ever read an Ernest Hemingway book?
I think that I did it again. I think that I have read a short story or two of his.
Okay.
But not A Farewell to Arms.
Yeah, I haven't read anything that he's done, ever, in my whole life.
I watched movies where he was depicted.
Oh, yeah. And I've watched other things that he wrote that were adapted to movies, I think.
We're flying off the cuff here. Finding Forrester, the movie with Sean Connery. You know what I'm talking about?
You're the man now, dog.
That's 100% where I was going with this. Does he, he doesn't play Ernest Hemingway in that, does he?
Oh, I don't know. I've never actually seen it.
There's a movie where he plays Ernest Hemingway for sure. I just can't imagine it's the You're the Man Now, Dog movie. You're the man now, dog.
It's so funny.
I think it's really funny that's like he was Bond.
Yeah.
And like if someone's like, hey, Sean Connery, where do you know him from? I'm like, oh, you know, You're the Man Now, dog.
Not the weirdest thing a Bond has done.
That's so true.
Yeah. So,
Well, we're looking at you, Pierce Brosnan.
hey, this is the return, once again, of the first Best Director winner, Frank Borzage. Frank Borzage.
You want to take that again?
The return of the very first Best Director winner, Frank Borzage?
Zeggy.
Borzage.
You know what we should do? We should have a soundboard of all the Chevalier and Borzegi. So whenever we're like directed by Frank, and then press the button Borzegi,
But like a speak and spell doing it. Borzage.
Chevalier.
That's what we need.
We do 100% need that. We're talking about A Farewell to Arms.
Yeah, we are.
This is the movie that was adapted from the, I almost said Sean Connery, the Ernest Hemingway novel. This was nominated for 4 things. Outstanding production for Paramount.
Keep leading with that. That feels so bizarre to me. Like, it's okay.
It felt like you were doing a little Princess Bride right there of like, you keep leading with that.
I don't think you know what the intensity of that award.
It was either that or the Mission Impossible 2 line reading from Tom Cruise where he's like, you keep calling me this name. You really shouldn't. That's for all my John Woo fans out there. All right, I'll close with it then.
Oh, I'm sorry. You could do
No,
whatever you
it's
want.
ruined now.
Okay.
Best cinematography, Charles Lang. Best sound recording, Franklin Hansen. Best art direction, Hans Dreyer and Roland Anderson. And of course, finally, as we always do, outstanding production from Paramount. Not Paramount Publix. Paramount.
This is true.
We'll get there. We'll cover that in our ceremony episode. But a big change. And talk to me a little bit about the cast and direction.
So, as I said at the top, directed by Frank Borzage. Nailed it.
You did say that.
Frank Borzage. Helen Hayes returns as Catherine Barclay.
Yes, and
Okay.
I also love how you said that like she's Captain America.
She has returned. Gary
Somehow.
Cooper also returns. We saw him in Wings. Remember that? That was a long time ago,
Oh,
it
yeah.
feels like. He plays Lieutenant Frederick Henry. And again, the return of Adolphe Menjou as Captain Rinaldi.
I have some things that I'd like to say off the top about these people.
Yeah.
But real quick, also worth noting that although it was based on the novel by Ernest Hemingway, this movie was written by Benjamin Glazer and Oliver H.P. Garrett.
Yeah.
So a couple things I want to point out. Gary Cooper's name is Frederick, but I do think that Adolphe Menjou is becoming a bit of a Louis Wolheim / you know where I'm going with this, Wallace Beery, to where I think I'm kind of obsessed with him a bit.
Yeah.
His character in this movie is so funny.
It's very good.
He calls Frederick baby.
Right. Because
All the time.
Adolphe Menjou plays an Italian soldier.
Correct.
So he's got like this heavy Italian accent. And it's very much like, hey, baby.
You're back from war, baby. And I'm like, wow, this rocks.
Yeah.
2 grown men just calling each other baby. This is cool.
Which I'll talk about that at the end.
I'm very excited. I also want to jump to the end just a little bit here. One of his final scenes with Frederick, Rinaldi says to him as he's going off on a boat, "Ciao, baby. I need you to know that unfortunately that's a new stim for me, and I'm going to be saying ciao, baby, like that so often."
Dude, I would love if that became the way we said goodbye to each other.
Ciao, baby.
Yeah, just all the time.
It's going to happen. I look forward to that. So, A Farewell to Arms. I think you're right. The way that we do this, we don't want to get too in the weeds with a synopsis, But essentially, what we see is we meet both Frederick and Catherine as they are involved in the war, right? On Frederick's side, he's an ambulance driver, and on Catherine's side, she's a nurse. And we see how they become connected in Italy during the war, and how this ultimately brings them together and brings them apart, or sets them apart.
Yeah.
Through the years, or at least months. Actually, that's true. This only happens in 1 year. I think it's between it's like June and September or October.
Gotcha.
Either way, it's a span of months.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like separated. The first half is in June, and then the second half is like October, November. So we'll get into it here. I kind of want to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off a little bit on this, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
I didn't love this.
So here's the thing. We've seen Borzage now quite a few times.
At least twice.
Seventh Heaven, Bad Girl.
Right.
And now A Farewell to Arms. And I believe that's it.
Certainly not the only movies he's done, but the ones we've covered on the podcast.
Right.
Right.
And we've discussed how he deals a lot with like young love, very much from like a melodramatic point of view. And I think that I'm starting to notice cliches in his work.
Sure.
Or just like an outline of things that like he has to tick boxes in all of his movies. And this is no exception.
Correct.
I think that Catherine and Frederick's romance here is very reminiscent to every other film of his that we've covered at this point. There's a lot of Chico and Diane in them, in the dynamics of that relationship.
Yeah.
And Helen Hayes and Gary Cooper together, I think they have great chemistry in this.
They're very good.
Just like I think Chico and Diane have great chemistry. Clara Bow and remind me? This is a test to you. No, you don't remember? Yeah, I don't remember.
Give me 20 seconds.
But slowly opening the book.
Slowly. I'm trying.
No, I think that their chemistry is fantastic, and I think that their on-screen romance like is depicted very well. But I've kind of already seen this, and that seems unfair to say, as this is an adaptation of a very, very popular and successful Ernest Hemingway story. The first Hemingway story adapted to film ever, which is kind of a big deal. But I think I'm just kind of getting tired of Borzagi's style here. You know, it's not bringing anything new to the table.
Charles Farrell?
That's him.
Okay.
Charles Farrell.
Sorry, it took me a second.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be a little, I don't want to say like, this is my, like, I'm cementing my place in history with this review of it, or my thoughts. I'm going to be a little less forgiving. To me, this was just a very derivative of Seventh Heaven.
Yeah.
And what really is confusing is that I think, well, let's start at the beginning here. A Farewell to Arms is something that we both have heard plenty of times. If you've never read the novel, if you've never seen the movie, you have heard the prestigious nature behind something like A Farewell to Arms. Mm-hmm. So you have a little bit of an idea of what that, like, okay, well, what am I in for with this? And ultimately, the story of, how war can keep love between people together and apart, ultimately in this movie, doesn't really go too far. It doesn't really do too much, and it doesn't really do too little. It's just somewhere right there in the middle. And that, to me, felt so similar to Seventh Heaven. There are scenes in the movie that are like straight out, okay, well, we've seen this before with Seventh Heaven. Okay, you've done this before. This relationship and how war can keep you apart, and like how I really want to be with this person, but I can't because the war is keeping us apart, just felt too similar to Seventh Heaven for me.
Yeah.
And, if it happens to be like, hey, this reminds me of a movie from like, 5 years ago or so, fine. So what? When it's the same director, it feels a little less,
Right.
You've done this before.
And there's a very direct connection there between Seventh Heaven and this. But I think even when you throw Bad Girl into the mix in the middle, like that's a very different movie as far as like the plot itself goes. There's no war involved in that.
Yeah.
But it is like a similar relationship of two characters that almost reluctantly end up together and then form a very passionate romance. But then there are outside forces and parties trying to separate them or cause divisiveness in their relationship.
If not just to keep them focused on what they're doing.
Exactly.
Right? That's Rinaldi's case for Frederick, is that he wants him to focus on the war, so he's keeping these letters from going out to Catherine.
Yeah, it's It's so weird because I feel like I'm being very critical of Borzegi and his stories now because I've seen them so many times.
Sure.
But like, this is an original book.
Right.
So it's almost like, well, sorry, Hemingway, that's not your fault. I kind of wish somebody else directed this.
However, Ernest Hemingway has gone on record saying he is very vocal of his hatred for this adaptation.
Really?
This interpretation specifically. His quotes exactly are too romantic. And
Borzegi.
I see what he's saying. Like, obviously when we see Seventh Heaven and Bad Girl, like he has the romance that he goes after.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he added more romance into this story than there was intended to be by the author. And that to me is why it leans too much like Seventh Heaven, where like, why would you be adding romance where it doesn't need to be? So it's interesting because I read that, and I don't have this written down, so forgive me for getting this wrong, but I read that Ernest Hemingway had like a little bit of, concern about the movie with Gary Cooper. They ended up being really good friends.
Oh, yeah. They were great friends.
So, some good came out of the movie in terms of Ernest Hemingway and what he got out of it. But ultimately, when the author of the book that this is based on isn't happy with the interpretation, it's one thing to be like Stephen King, where it's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm a big fan of that one. To say you hated it, his words, like he vocal hatred of the movie, that's difficult. And to me, I take that on top of what I felt when I was watching the movie, and it stopped me from really connecting with it much. That doesn't mean it's terrible, like, 0 star, half star, whatever. We'll get to our ratings later. But it did stop me from really enjoying it when otherwise I really wanted to enjoy something that has as much of a prestige nature behind something like A Farewell to Arms.
Right. No, I totally agree with you. It really is like I'm okay with the story and I'm okay with melodrama. I don't know if I was tired of seeing it from the same person, Borzegi, or if I just wasn't in the mood for it. It's hard to say.
I think it might be more the latter for me. Maybe a third option, which is I need something to break up the melodrama. Now,
Sure.
we talked a lot about in I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. That is a very melodramatic movie. I even said, like, technically the movie should be called Aw Man, of like, he just can't catch a break.
Yeah.
But the reason that the things that keep me from feeling that's just a too melodramatic of a movie is that there are things that break that apart. And in I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, similarly in Smiling Through, there's camera work. There are things like, characters and dialogue that keep you from it breaks it up and makes it feel a little more energetic. I'll give you a perfect example. In this movie, A Farewell to Arms, one of the first things that we see Frederick and Rinaldi agreeing that they're going to go out on the town. Mm-hmm. Let's go out in the town. Let's paint the town red. And the camera cuts, and it's a window. And you see people walking by in the window. And then it pans back. And as it pans back, almost like a reverse Wings, which I appreciated. As it pans back, people are coming into the frame.
Yeah.
And it's a woman on the left with her shoe, and Rinaldi's in the background. And you can see Frederick on the right kind of flirting with her as, like, he's talking and admiring her feet and her shoe. Weird.
Yeah.
And he's clearly drunk. I really like this shot. And this is like, I'm leaning in. I'm really interested in what's happening with this. Another scene that I really appreciated, the shot at least, was Frederick comes back from war, the ambulance, and he's trying to report in, you need to talk to the specific, is it the English unit? Like, this is the Italian unit? So you need to go down the hall. And he's watching someone get reprimanded, clearly. One of the nurses getting reprimanded. And as he's trying to, leave the room, he walks into a room where all the other nurses are kind of spying on this happening. And specifically, it's Catherine, who is spying not just through a keyhole and not just through a window. My girl is on a ladder, and she's all the way at the top looking through the window that is above the door, watching them. And as he walks through the door, he notices her. What I love about this shot is the camera is not just on the ground looking up at her. There is a camera angle like that. There is another camera angle that is over her shoulder. So presumably on another ladder, over her shoulder, or whatever it might be, camera work, looking over her shoulder, and you can see through the window down into the room where she's being reprimanded.
Yeah.
There's a great focus shot in this. And again, you could have just done, over the shoulder and then pretend that she's up there. No, they went up there and they got that shot with her.
Yeah.
Loved that. And then there's another shot of the camera on a ladder above Frederick. And he looks up and sees Catherine. And when he realizes what she's doing, he gives like just a little like tisk tisk with his finger, a tut tut, and then walks away. And to me, I really liked the intentionality of where the camera was, of like, hey, it's not just we capture this on the ground. We need one camera down here and then another camera over her shoulder, but then another camera in place of her looking down at him.
Yeah.
And there are 4 different camera placements of this one interaction of the two of them that lasts maybe 3 seconds. And it didn't feel like, whiplash of where am I right now?
Yeah.
But it felt like there's intentionality and there's like really like you're connecting with the characters through the camera work. And I didn't feel that as the movie went forward. So as like the more melodramatic events happen and they're kept apart at war and they can't communicate with one another, I didn't feel that camera work in trying to like stand in for the characters to show how they're feeling.
Right.
So it really is just truly what is happening to the characters and nothing else. And that keeps me from feeling invested in the story.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I think this is a movie where you can tell that they had a crane on set.
Oh, for sure.
There are so many great crane shots. Another one that I really liked is when Catherine and Frederick are walking through the garden of the hospital, and the camera starts from way overhead and then comes down below this statue of a man on a horse.
Yes.
And it falls like right below the horse's hoofs.
Yeah.
Looking down at them. Just a really cool, unique, engaging shot. And there are a lot of tracking shots. There's some really cool camera work overall in this. But I do agree that after you reach a certain point in this movie, they kind of abandon that and they focus more on the melodrama, which again, as we said multiple times now, we're just kind of losing interest in like this particular tale, I think. So I was looking for more pizzazz from the cameras. And you do get plenty of it with Charles Lang and his cinematography in this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because to me, it just feels like the adaptation wasn't done. And again, I haven't read the book, so I can't say this 100%. But clearly, Ernest Hemingway's thoughts, the adaptation wasn't indicative of the novel.
Yeah,
right. It was a completely different interpretation. Couple things to learn. This was Ernest Hemingway's first adaptation into a film. So the first time one of his novels had been adapted into a film. So you learn a little bit from that of like, oh, maybe I need to have a little more. If I let this happen, I need to be more involved in this and like oversee the script. We now see like in a Stephen King scenario post The Shining where he's like, I kind of have to have same cast and everything. Like I need to know what happens with this. Yeah. So it's interesting to see how that evolves over time too. But clearly this is one of the first examples of this happening where they weren't very happy, at least vocally, weren't happy with it. What I do want to make sure we talk about is the cinematography was very impressive for the first half. I didn't feel that as much for the second half. But I do want to talk about the art direction. One of the nominations here was for Hans Trier and Roland Anderson. So I want to talk a bit about the art direction here. Obviously, we've talked with art direction about like, the way they've designed certain scenes, matte paintings. There's an interesting use of miniatures in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the first times that we've gotten to talk about miniatures in film for art direction. I thought this was incredible. I mean, so one of the miniatures is kind of like the ambulances, right? As the ambulances are driving through, you can sometimes you can tell a little more than others of like, oh, those are miniatures. But the idea is that it's supposed to kind of be like a wide shot, like, hey, how do we get this insane shot of like these ambulances driving through a war zone?
Right.
And the answer is miniatures.
Yeah, and I think it being obvious to us has to do with like the quality of the movies now.
Sure.
Surely when you were going to see these in the 30s,
you weren't thinking, oh, that's a miniature.
Yeah, you couldn't tell, I'm sure.
Right.
But I agree. When I saw that, I was like, huh, I love a miniature. It's so much fun.
There's also, we're skipping ahead just a little bit here just for a reference. There's also puppets in this. Mm-hmm. They're not meant to depict any specific characters, but I really like this transition scene of when it shows the passing of time. You see the curtain before the puppet show starts, and then the letters that spell out the months come down almost in marionette fashion.
Yeah.
And like twist around to sometimes not say the month, but then it's July, it's August, it's September, now it's October. I thought that was really cool. And then the curtain opens up and now it's a puppet show that Frederick and Catherine are watching together in Italy. Fantastic. Now, granted, I mean, that's not, again, supposed to like signify anything, but the use of puppets and miniatures in this, I thought was a nice touch. It added a little bit more to it, but unfortunately, to our point, with that happening in the middle of the movie, I think that's kind of where it lost me. And I just wasn't as involved anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. Past the halfway point in my notes, I did write it's shot incredibly well, and every shot counts. And I think that I do feel that way overall. I think that like the mobility in the camera and kind of the uniqueness of shots goes away, but I do think like the choice in like shot composition and things like that is still very intentional. Thank you. So that's exactly the word I was looking for.
Nailed it.
Appreciate it. But yeah, I really think that the movie itself was kind of working against me, of where I was just like, yeah, I've seen this. I get it. And I wonder if this was the first Borzage we had seen, if we'd be as critical.
Probably not. I mean, I think we'd still be like, yeah, this doesn't, like, it's not as exciting, but, I'd probably be like a star above it because I haven't seen this before.
Yeah.
But in this case, I have.
Yeah, that's fair.
And if anything, it might be a little more infuriating that this is the third that we've seen. Infuriating might be too hard of a word, but baffling that we've seen him do Bad Girl. So we know that he's capable of doing something differently. Mm-hmm. But I think now we're starting to see the trends in his filmmaking.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you revert back to something like Seventh Heaven after you've done Bad Girl, it just feels uninspired.
It almost feels to me like Wes Anderson, how Wes Anderson comes out with a movie and you know exactly what you're going to get as far as like style goes.
100%.
And I
Formula
think that
style.
Borzage is very much that type of director. Although his style's not as unique and identifiable.
No.
I think it's more of like
Pacing
and character depiction specifically. Because, yeah, I keep going to talk about the movie itself and like specific scenes, and it's more interesting to talk about the shots than like what actually transpires on screen.
Yeah, I mean, so if you've never read the novel Farewell to Arms or seen the movie, spoilers ahead for what we're going to talk about, but we are going to try to avoid just telling you the synopsis. We can't not talk about what happens at the ending. So I think a part of what I think is questionable about Frank Borzage and what he does is with Bad Girl, we see the ending be that like quiet conversation between the two leads in the car on their way after the hospital, right? Mm-hmm. Talking about hey, my kid's this is the future president of the United States in the car. We see like the humor and everything.
Yeah.
What we see in Farewell to Arms is more of a return to Seventh Heaven, in the sense that the final shot of Seventh Heaven is the sun shining down on the two of them as they fully embrace. Is he really there? Are they really together? That's up to interpretation. The ending of A Farewell to Arms is so, in my opinion, needlessly romantic. And not maybe romantic isn't the right word, but too romantic of a gesture of after Catherine's passing. And there's a whole scene with Helen Hayes that I want to talk about. But after her passing, you see wedding bells and the cuts of these different sounds happening in the background. And then the next cut is Frederick has picked up Catherine's body as she's draped in this dress or the blanket and carries her to the window. Mm-hmm. And there's just such it almost feels unearned in my opinion. That big romantic gesture of well, this isn't this heartbreaking, he's carrying his wife to the sunlight after this happens. And to me, having seen Bad Girl, I'm you did this with Seventh Heaven. Even Into the Light, we've embraced in the light one final time.
Yeah.
And granted, with Seventh Heaven, they might be alluding to whether or not he is really there. But in this, it's more the literal, I'm bringing her into the sunlight as she passes. And to me, I totally get what Ernest Hemingway is saying when he says it's too romantic, because that scene specifically was just all right, man, got you.
This was filmed with multiple endings.
Interesting.
There is the death ending.
Oh, I heard about this.
The life ending, and an ambiguous ending where you're not sure if she lives or dies. So I think that's really interesting because is Chico really there? Is he actually blind? Do they end up together?
Right.
You get more of that here. Obviously not in the final cut of the film. You have one very definitive ending, but multiple endings were filmed. So it's almost like Borzage is
this might be cool.
Maybe.
This could be cool.
Maybe I'll let you think about it for a while.
Which is what he did with Seventh Heaven.
Right. I don't know. I said that Gary Cooper and Helen Hayes in this have good chemistry together, but I don't think they are given enough good scenes together to really build that romance and that relationship. It feels like you get a lot of man, I really love that girl and I really love that man. But they're like talking to other people. Like you see more of people trying to keep them apart than them actually being together.
Which is interesting because behind the scenes, Helen Hayes has said like she had a huge crush on Gary Cooper.
Which, of course.
There's a Letterboxd review that I really liked that said, get in line.
Yeah.
Get in line, but also Helen Hayes, I think, is like 5 foot something, and Gary Cooper's like 6'2" or something. And someone was like, get away from him.
Yeah.
Like, you're not tall enough for him. Leave him to me.
Right.
I really love how much Letterboxd reviews are just thirsting over Gary Cooper at all times, which
Yes.
I get it. What I also like about this, and I do want to give the movie credit where it's needed or where it's earned. The opening, the meet cute between them is twofold. I think there's 2 meet cute scenes. One is when he walks in on her spying on her friend being reprimanded.
Yeah.
And makes that tut look at her. And her thought at this point must be, oh man, this guy has he has some power over me in terms of like his rank.
Yeah.
He outranks me. And I kind of got shunned just now. I'm being reprimanded a little bit by him too, but very quietly. And now like I'm kind of looking up to him because he has given his authority to me,
right.
Shown his authority. And then the next meet cute they have is when she trips over his leg when there's like a siren, a bomb siren going off for bombs being dropped. And she has tripped over his leg while he is drunk, still having a conversation in his head with the woman he was having a conversation with about her feet and her shoes.
Yeah.
She trips over his leg and she's like, oh, wow, that's that guy who outranks me. I wonder what he's going to say. And he's like, the arch of a foot is interesting.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, never mind. You're just a regular guy.
Yes.
Who's talking about feet.
It's a really interesting scene. It's the closest the camera has been to a foot in the entire run of the podcast.
Wow. I guess
big foot movie.
There's those milestones that you don't think about.
Yeah.
Of like, this is the first time we've had close up on feet, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. And I want to take a side detour here because they do have the meet cute there, but it is
the feet cute.
The feet cute. Yeah. Do you think Helen Hayes is on, what is it? Foot Finder? Is that what that's called?
Is this
Can we put this in the podcast?
Are we in a good space to where I can ask you what that is?
Or, yeah, isn't that you can go look at feet. I don't look at the feet.
Uh-huh. Sure.
Maybe I'll cut this from the podcast.
Maybe give me your phone. Maybe give me your internet browser right now.
Delete?
No, you can't do that.
Delete cute. But yeah, they have that meet cute, and it does revolve around him being at a brothel.
Right.
Again, we're seeing a lot of this in these movies, a lot of sex or sex workers, and this is another thing that the production code is like, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
Yeah, because they never say anything, but like, of course, he's talking about a woman's foot. Like she's laughing almost kind of annoyingly.
She's got this like, oh,
It's
I'm going
almost
to laugh
like
at anything you say, and I'm going to giggle.
Yeah, but it's almost like canned giggling.
Yeah.
Where she's like, I don't know. And he's like, what do you mean you know? And it cuts to like, hee, like over and over and over. But the thing that really sold it to me of like, okay, yeah, for sure, it's a brothel. When the sirens are going off, people are jumping out of windows to get out of there. But also one guy's like running out the door and he's like putting his pants like back on kind of. So he's like fastening his belt.
Yep.
So I get it. Like there's things they can show but not say. And I think get away. I'm using quotations here.
Right.
Get away with it.
Yeah, well, I think the first like 10 or 15 minutes, which is kind of where this segment ends, is kind of littered with so much of this production code controversy.
Yeah.
Because the nurse you're talking about that's being reprimanded at the beginning of the film, it's because she is pregnant from supposedly another soldier, which is obviously a big problem. Child out of wedlock, out overseas. I want to say it's being run by like Catholic nuns as well. So there's that element of it as well. And once the movie started, I was like, oh, wow, we've got pregnancy out of wedlock. Oh, we're at a brothel. Oh, Gary Cooper is shirtless.
The church is involved in, some of the things going on here.
Yeah, and it just kept going. And I was like, okay, here we are. Here are literally all of the elements of a pre-code film just on full display here. And there's even an element of not directly anti-war, but the fact that Gary Cooper's character goes AWOL and runs away so that he can be with Catherine.
Yes.
I think any of that like going against your country and your duty to your country is pretty frowned upon by the code as well.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like when this movie opened up, there was a lot that was really drawing me to it, and then it just kind of turned into this big romance that I lost interest with.
Yeah, it's also kind of like you don't want to hear that the plot of the movie is this could or could not happen. And that's kind of the second half for me. The second half of the movie is well, we're together and we want to talk about having kids, but we can't really talk about having kids without being, married.
Ugh.
But we really can't get married until someone blesses us. But oh my God, look, we're being blessed right now. That's incredible.
My least favorite part of the movie.
Yeah.
Right there. Frederick is in bed. He's injured. Which
bomb went off. His leg was like, they listed off all the things. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure.
Great line as well when they ask, wow, what happened to you? I was blown up eating cheese. Because they're talking to him like he's a war hero. And Rinaldi specifically is like, you'll get a medal for this and be considered a hero for all time.
Yeah.
And in reality, he was sitting in his bunker and about to slice some cheese for all the men and drink some wine. And the bomb went off. So, way to go, Gary.
Yeah, it was. I did like that line as a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah, it was very funny.
But it was that sequence where he's in bed.
Yeah.
And Catherine has come to his side. And okay, I just thought of this. I will give Borzecki another credit here, or at least the cinematography. There's a sequence in which Frederick is in bed and the camera takes the place of Frederick.
The point of view.
Point of view. And you see nurses come in and you see Catherine come in and she even leans over and gives like a kiss underneath the camera or right above it. I can't remember. But she leans into the camera to give the kiss. And like you can still hear his dialogue perfectly. And I really liked this because, again, it was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But that happens before the time jump. And I think anything after the time jump, to me, it just wasn't as interesting. But so this is where, to me, I was starting to see Seventh Heaven. Mm-hmm. Of like, they haven't been kept apart from war yet, but they're the whole like, oh, boy, marriage would really solve our problems here, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then another guy's like, well, hey, why don't I help you out with that?
Yeah.
And you cut forward in time, you're like, okay, great, so they're married. But then after the time jump, when they're watching the puppet show, they're like, yeah, this is great being engaged, huh? Or like soon to be married. And someone's like, you're not going to be married for long. Like they are jaded. They're in a relationship. They're like, don't worry, romance isn't what you think it is.
Right.
But then they they say out loud, like, yeah, we're not married yet. I'm like,
yeah, what was that whole thing with
what's
the priest then?
Yeah. So I think it was more like he's giving them a blessing to get married.
Right.
So then they can get married, but they still haven't. And it's not like they're planning a wedding or anything. It's just, yeah, we're together.
Right.
And it's better now.
I despised that scene with the priest, though. It drove me nuts because they're in bed and they're talking about marriage, and then the priest turns his back and just starts like mumbling to himself.
Well, at first it looks like he's like, in shock. That he's like, how could you be saying such things about having children in the future?
Yeah.
And you're not even married.
Right.
And then he turns his back and you're like, is he going to call the cops on them?
No. And instead he's like, and they're like, hey, Father, what are you doing? Is he blessing us? Is that? And you're like, answer them, dude. What are you doing?
The only thing that annoyed me more than that, which is annoying, is that the audio that they're using clearly does not match up with what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's an older movie.
They're literally using.
Exactly. Like, you can't hear what he's saying, but the movements that his lips are making don't even remotely match what you're hearing.
It drives me nuts.
And like, if they do it for one scene, fine. But to your point, you aren't exaggerating. That cut is like 3 or 4 times.
Goes on forever.
And it continues to be not synced up.
And the fact that it's not synced up makes it look like he's like casting a spell on them.
Right. I was like, is he like cursing them?
Right. It drove me nuts.
But thankfully, I don't want to say thankfully because it lends itself to the scene being ineffective, is the acting on Helen Hayes and Gary Cooper. Yeah. In that they're like, oh, he's blessing us. Well, this is great news, isn't it, honey? Like, have you seen those, the TikTok trend of like someone throwing out something that belongs to you and you're like, wait a minute. And then they start counting really fast.
Oh,
like, that's what this was.
Yeah.
It was just him like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. and you can't even make out what he's saying after a while.
Oh, it's so annoying.
I think that was the beginning of the end for me, where I was like, what's going on?
Well, yeah, because at that point you start to realize, okay, everybody in this movie who is not Helen Hayes or Gary Cooper is the most annoying character of all time.
Rinaldi took such a turn.
I loved him at first.
Yeah.
He's so much fun. He's like, hey, Frederick, baby.
Ciao, baby.
Let's go out. Let's have a good time, baby. And then he's like, oh, you love this girl? No, absolutely not.
You need to focus on your country.
Focus on me, baby.
Yeah.
And
If this was a love triangle, then let's get into it.
it would have been great.
Yeah.
But then also, Catherine's friend Fergie is the same way. She's like, you can't marry this guy. He's a soldier. You can't do that. You can't have a baby with this guy. Just constantly. Everybody is like trying to tear them apart.
Yeah.
In the most annoying way, too. Like, Rinaldi being like, hey, you're my best friend, baby. I am going to hide every letter you get from the woman you love.
Yeah.
It made for such an unenjoyable experience.
I'm very grateful that you brought up Fergie. So her name is Ferguson, but she goes by Fergie to Catherine.
Yeah.
I need you to know that the first time that I heard her referred as Fergie, that's not saying the first time it happened in the movie, but the first time I heard it was when she is meeting Catherine on her way to Switzerland, right? She like brings her suitcase for her. And she's like, oh, Fergie, thank you. And I was like, London Bridge? Like, what do you mean, Fergie? I had not heard Fergie in reference to anyone outside of, the Duchess herself.
Right.
From Black Eyed Peas, for anyone who's unknowledged on that.
Yeah, and I gotta say, this Fergie is not Fergalicious.
She's not
at all.
Fergalicious. I wouldn't even say she's glamorous.
No. She's repetitious in her being annoying.
Right.
She says that, right?
Sure.
Fergie says that?
And then Helen Hayes proves that big girls do cry.
Yeah, they do. And they die.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. I need to meet you somewhere with that. I have a new series, and I think that this movie falls into this series as it well does with Aerosmith. And I'm introducing a new series called Helen Hayes Can't Not Die.
Oh.
Where
yeah.
she's featured in a movie where she's going to have to die.
Ugh, yeah.
And if your question is like, well, why does she have to? Because she does.
Yeah.
Both these movies just posit it's better for the story if she just dies.
She's the Sean Bean of the 1930s.
She is the Sean Bean. Maybe we'll call it the Sean Bean Honorary Helen Hayes Can't Die Award.
Yeah, I like that. Who wins the Sean Bean Award for this decade? Right now, it's Helen Hayes.
That's true. Sean Bean Can't Not Die. We're copyright. Speaking of copyright, wow,
Yeah.
Look at me setting myself up for this. I want to point out here that the original copyright holder of A Farewell to Arms, the film adaptation, failed to renew the copyright, which resulted in like a ton of VHS and DVDs having extremely poor quality. So if you find some DVDs or even VHS of the 1932 Farewell to Arms, directed by Frank Borzecki, there is a chance that unless you found like a reputable brand, that you're going to find a couple of like poor quality.
Yeah.
So my suggestion to you is this. Kino Lorber released a Blu-ray of Farewell to Arms. Looks fantastic. What I love about this is it's not a perfect cut. You still see some like burn marks and like you can hear a couple cuts here and there. But ultimately, it looks beautiful, and that's just the film itself. So Kino Lorber is the way to go. Just be wary if you're going out to buy DVDs and VHS of Farewell to Arms because the copyright resulted in some poor quality.
Well, the interesting thing there, too, is this was reissued in 1938, but it was a 72-minute cut of the film. So there's a lot. The movie itself
Presumably after the production or the Hays Code.
Yeah. So the film itself is 89 minutes, but that was lost until 1999. So if you do happen to find a VHS copy of the film, it's probably that 72-minute cut, which would be very interesting to see, especially knowing that there were multiple endings shot for this. I wonder what that would look like.
Worth noting that the Kino Lorber edition, and I think what would be considered like the theatrical version of this movie, is the one where Helen Hayes does pass. At the end of the movie.
That's the canon version of this film.
Can you imagine Ernest Hemingway saying that? Like, this ending is canon.
Yeah. Was the Kino Lorber version, did that have a colored version as well?
Not that I saw. Special features, there was like a few things. You know what's interesting? No subtitles.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I couldn't turn subtitles on for it, and I checked, and it says no subtitles.
I don't think I like that.
I don't think I like that either. Good news is, as we move forward in time, you don't need it as much. We needed this a lot in like 1931, maybe like 1930. As we get in 1932, 1933, it's a bit easier to pick up the majority of the dialogue.
Yeah, I just think for inclusivity, it's a little...
True.
Like, what are we doing?
And also, I can't hear without my subtitles.
Same. Agreed. Yeah, I watched this on Hoopla, the service connected to libraries.
Uh-huh.
And there was a color version of it as well.
Oh.
So at some point it received a color upgrade.
Closer to the 1938 restoration.
I don't know, because it was the full movie. So I'm not sure what version that is.
Yeah, it's interesting because same with Aerosmith. The Blu-ray cover is in color, right? Like they've colorized it, but then the movie itself is in black and white. I mean, that happens all the time. It's not like these two movies only did that, but...
Yeah, but Aerosmith wasn't in color.
No, but the cover is.
Okay.
The cover of the Blu-ray and DVD and everything is like in color.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Okay.
But the other thing I want to mention about this while we're talking about behind the scenes before we get back into it. So Adolphe Menjou, he was playing, I believe he was also an ambulance driver in the war along with Frederick. Yeah. Fun thing, maybe not fun for him, he was an ambulance corps captain during World War I. So he had some knowledge on this. Now, granted, I don't know how much expertise and, like, you know, authenticity you can bring to, like, oh, that really was... He's behaving like a guy who was a corps captain in the war for ambulance driving.
Yeah.
But either way, it must have been nice to have someone on site to be like, oh, no, you would do this, because that's what I did when I was there.
This is how you do it, baby.
Here's how you drive the car, baby. That's going to go a long way. Lore has been unlocked. Last thing for me, when it comes to behind the scenes, fun thing about Farewell to Arms... 2 Oscar winners and an Oscar nominee in this movie.
2 Oscar winners, Oscar nominee. Oh, in the cast.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Adolphe Menjou is the Oscar nominee. Obviously, we talked about him as Walter Burns in the front page. Good to see him back. Helen Hayes also won 2 Oscars in this case.
Yeah.
Last year was The Sin of Madeline Claudette that we talked about. What was it afterwards? A little bit of trivia for you.
Airport.
It was Airport in 1970.
Yeah.
Look at you. Well done. And then Gary Cooper won 2 Oscars as well. These were all after Farewell to Arms.
Of course, yeah.
Do you know what he won for?
For Whom the Bell Tolls?
Incorrect.
Then I got nothing.
Sergeant York in 1941.
Yeah.
And then High Noon in 1952.
I knew Sergeant York. Covered it on the first iteration.
Oh, look at you. But you did pull Airport out, and that was impressive.
Yeah.
Well done.
That's actually because we talked about Helen Hayes last year with Aerosmith.
Oh. But still, interesting to see how many Oscar-winning performances or Oscar-winning actors we saw in the film.
Yeah.
And even with that, no acting nominations for Farewell to Arms.
No. Do you think that that's like a missed opportunity there? Do you think anybody was deserving? I'm going to be honest with you. I was a little lukewarm on Gary Cooper.
I think Gary Cooper is an incredible actor, and he's incredibly attractive. Like, he's a handsome man.
Sure.
But no, I didn't really think that there was a performance in this that was specifically like a standout. I did like Adolphe Menjou a good bit.
How could you not?
How could you not? Even with him, like, that's why maybe it's betrayal that I also felt. Mm-hmm. My rating might be completely invoked by his betrayal when he's like, he needs to focus on the war, baby.
Baby.
I was like, no, he wouldn't do this. Rinaldi wouldn't do that.
Yeah, why would Rinaldi do this?
Maybe that's it too. But no, I mean, outside of, I think I liked his character. I don't know if I loved the performance.
Yeah.
So I think you're right.
Yeah. Let's talk about the ending scene real quick before we get into ratings. Because I think that, I don't know, you said this was a little melodramatic for you.
Yes.
I do like the way it's done. At this point, Catherine is pregnant. She's pretty far along in her pregnancy, and she discovers that all of Frederick's letters and her letters have been returned to sender, basically. Neither one of them have been able to communicate with each other. And she learns this at the post office, and this reveal causes her to faint.
I did like the comparison of the two, where he found that all the letters had been returned, and he kind of like looks down a little bit, and he's a little sad, and he's like, okay, and like turns around and leaves.
Yeah.
And with her, she's like, oh, and like faints immediately.
Which, you know, typical 1930s.
Who's been there?
Yeah. But because of this, she ends up in the hospital, and Frederick decides at this point he's going AWOL so that he can get to Catherine and check in on her.
Right.
He shows up, and this was kind of bizarre. He's speaking with the doctors, and he's like, is she okay? And they're like, listen, she lost the baby. And he's like, but is she okay? And
he does say, like, it doesn't matter to me as long as she's okay.
Exactly.
And I was like, well, that's messed up.
It's let's be a little more sensitive, Gary.
I agree.
You know, but after that, a part that I did enjoy is because he was so like whatever about the baby being lost. He heads to the bar to kind of relieve some of his stress. And there's a lot of symbolism here that kind of feels a little heavy-handed, but I like some of it on display. He walks past a dog in an alley that is looking at a pot, trying to find food, and it's a pot with a lid on it. And he walks by the dog, and he lifts up the pot to show the dog there's nothing in there. And he says, specifically, this made me laugh a little bit, "There's nothing in there, dog." And then he walks away. And that moment there is kind of a heavy-handed way of being like, there's nothing in Catherine.
Yes.
The baby is gone. Then he makes his way to the bar, and I thought this was interesting, a way to kind of showcase the way he's going to miss Catherine being a mother. He walks up to the barkeep, who is a woman, and the camera is looking at her face, and then it slowly tilts down to focus on her breasts. And this is his way of seeing her as a woman, as a mother.
Right.
And I believe he asks her before he orders food or a drink or whatever. He's like, are you a mother? Have you been a mother? Making an assumption against her. And she's like, what? He's like, never mind, I'll take a beer. And you can tell that this is just very much on his mind, you know? But I liked both of those scenes, even if they did feel a little heavy-handed, because they were trying to do something.
Yeah, it's just, for me, I'm trying to think of the reason I laughed mostly at that is I'm trying to think of the alternative of what it would be for me if I go into a bar. Like, imagine I saw Michael in theaters, the Michael Jackson biopic.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there like mad that the movie wasn't good. And then, spoiler. And then I talk to a barkeep and I'm just like, do you like Michael Jackson? And they're like, what? I'm like, just a beer, please.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of
Forget it.
what the alternative would be for me. And it would certainly be that. It
Yeah.
would be me being like, what are your thoughts on Christopher Nolan's filmography? And they're like, what? I'm like, just a Heineken.
Have you ever looked up yourself on Foot Finder? What? Never mind.
Just a beer. Yeah, we're gonna have to do some research into your search history.
Well,
on that,
you know.
man.
So after that, you do get to the finale of this movie, and this is a huge climax.
I do want to make one big point here, and it's that Helen Hayes is still alive, but knows that she's going to die.
Right.
And she tells the doctors and the nurses, she's like, just please, I haven't seen my husband in forever, whatever he might be.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen my Frederick in a very long time. Just please don't tell him that I'm dying. I need him to just come in and talk to me as me and not as his dying partner.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, of course. Don't worry. And as they walk out and they see him, I need them to do a better job. And because they walk out and they look at him and they just like look down and they're just like, what a shame. And like walk away. And I'm like, it's pretty indicative of what's going on in there,
They walk
man.
by and they're like, dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, I mean, at least the nurse tried to have a little bit of like, she was a little like couth with it, and she was like, okay, she's ready to see you now. But the doctor was just straight up like,
Yeah.
it's not looking good in there, man. Like that was the head shake and the look.
The
Like
priest walks out.
he
like,
looks directly in Frederick's eyes and is like, okay, and like walks away.
does the knife to the throat, like,
Come on, man. Be a little cooler than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that leads to the scene you're talking about now.
right. And they do have their romantic moment. They're finally seeing each other again for the first time in forever. And I think that Helen Hayes is the standout here. I think that her performance on her literal deathbed is very well done. The writing might feel a little melodramatic, but I think that's kind of
Ham-fisted is the word I'd probably use.
yeah, it's kind of a staple of Borzage, I think, at this point. But she has a kind of a haunting moment. I think that deaths for characters, from what we've covered, have been a little cheesy and cliche and not well done. But and you could argue the cheesiness exists here, but it's also kind of unsettling at a point because she has that moment where she tells Frederick, "I don't want to die," and it's spooky. It gave me a that feeling of I don't like that.
Well, it was almost like a realization.
Yeah.
Like the way she said it was like, oh, I'm dying, aren't I?
This is actually happening to
Yeah.
me. So yeah, she has this really great performance, I think, here with with Frederick, with Gary Cooper, and ultimately she does pass away. And yeah, Frederick picks up her body, like you said earlier, and carries her to the window, and he kind of like starts praying to God, and it's all just melodrama. I think visually it looks pretty good, but again, we've seen this, we've felt these same emotions for this type of story, and I'm just kind of over it.
One thing that I did appreciate about that scene was at one point Gary Cooper lays his head on her like shoulder, and like his nose is like on her cheek while she's talking. And I think this is the closest we've seen two actors in like one scene, like exchanging scenes together, or lines of dialogue. And I thought that was like probably the most romantic thing that we saw. Was like there was no lifting, there was no like romantic gesture. It was just him leaning on her, feeling emotional while she's talking. And I thought like that scene between them was very good with their acting. But ultimately, it had just kind of been like, okay, so we're here now.
Yeah.
Like the same place where we were at minute 40 with his like leg being broken and ankle and everything, him being bedbound and then being like, oh, I wish we were married, is kind of mirrored here. And it's, I wish we could have been married and this would have been great. I think that's why it cuts to the wedding bell, the church bells, to kind of show like their union in some sense, as he carries her to the window for the sunlight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, melodramatic is the right word, but just also a little ham-fisted, a little bit of that. But the acting is fantastic.
I agree, specifically from Helen Hayes for me.
Correct. I even think Gary Cooper, the way he's receiving it, like he's not trying to one-up her. He's not like taking the scene away from her.
Yeah.
But he's reacting, I think, perfectly.
That's true. I should give him more credit for being able to like dial it back in while she gets her moment to shine.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's a farewell to arms. I think that we can both agree that the highlights here come from kind of the technical categories. To speak on Charles Lang a little bit, he received 18 nominations throughout his career. He's tied with Leon... Ooh, I need to write better. I'm going to say Leon Shanzi, I believe. Forgive me if my handwriting was terrible. I was on set and delirious. For most nominations in the cinematography category. So 18 nominations. As far as the art direction goes, with Hans Trier, he was Paramount's supervising art director until 1950.
Oh, wow.
And he received 23 nominations in the category.
Wow.
We'll see him return specifically with Sunset Boulevard.
I really like how you're teasing this up like Palpatine.
Yeah.
Like somehow they will return.
Somehow Hans returned 23 times. And there was one other that I wanted to point out. In the sound department, Franklin B. Hansen had 5 nominations and 1 win. We saw his work in The Love Parade, which we were fans of.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool because that was such an early sound film. So it's cool to see how far he's come with that.
Right.
The last thing that I'll say about this is Gary Cooper. Probably going to be one of the biggest names we talk about for the next 30, maybe 40 years.
For sure.
Probably like 30 years. How do you feel about Gary Cooper in general? Have you seen a lot of his films?
I haven't. So my immediate knowledge of Gary Cooper is the Putting on the Ritz song.
Yeah.
Which I referenced earlier and you didn't cite. So I'm just, a little spiteful on you on that. So, oops. So that's about it for me. So this was my first like introduction to him as an actor.
Yeah.
At least that I'm aware of. I may have seen a movie he was in without knowing. But I'm excited because, again, I think he looks... He's got the look down for the major actor, big star. I liked him in this movie, and that's the thing that's really frustrating. I don't think the movie is their fault.
No,
I think it's the writing. Maybe it's the familiar territory that Frank Borzage has done previously with Seventh Heaven, and just feeling a little derivative of that. And the melodrama aspect just was not interesting for me.
Yeah, no, I
think he's great.
Agree.
I'm excited to see him in the future.
Yeah, I don't think that this was the movie to really like build up that excitement for me with him, but I've seen High Noon, and I really like when he kind of becomes his trademark, as Tony Soprano calls him, the strong silent type.
He does a pretty good job of that in this too.
Yeah, I think it takes away from his character at times for me, where I'm like, well, I wish I got a little more from you.
Yeah.
I think when he's playing like the quiet Westerner, I like that a little bit more. But I agree. I'm very excited to see more of Gary Cooper. But yeah, farewell to arms.
Farewell.
Yippee.
Let's get into ratings. So where did you land on this?
I was very middle of the road with this, as has been alluded to. I gave it 3 stars for all of the reasons previously mentioned. What about you?
I was quite literally middle of the road. Two and a half.
Show off.
For me.
Yeah.
Just, and it sucks because what I don't like doing is I don't like looking at these movies, seeing a general rating of 3.3 and then being below that. Like,
right.
It makes me feel like I'm missing something in that. But for me specifically, I got to be true to not just the 2026 perspective or perception of these movies, but also, what this project is doing. And this project has us watching Seventh Heaven a couple months separated from watching A Farewell to Arms.
Yeah.
So having that fresh in my mind is going to result in like seeing a comparison in these, like in the work. And ideally, if your work is really good as a director or as an artist, that timing doesn't matter. And you can have it follow up immediately after and be like, oh, cool, I see the value in both of these. So 2.5 for me. I could probably go lower, honestly. I don't really want to. It doesn't feel respectful to the work, Ernest Hemingway, or the actors in this. But yeah, 2.5 is where I stood.
And I feel like that might be where I sit too.
Okay.
The longer I sit on it. So...
Well, it makes me feel a little bit better. I mean, I was happy to see you, Ziggy, and Bryce all at 3 stars with this.
Yeah.
Because, while I'm not where you are, I'm pretty close.
I think that a lot of the reviews that led to a 3.3, 3.5, whatever it was, come from Gary Cooper fans. I think that most of the reviews I see are just kind of praising Gary Cooper, not even really for his performance in this, but just for being Gary Cooper.
Yeah.
People love that man.
You're right, and I want to point that out with 2 reviews on Letterboxd. These are the top 2 reviews on Letterboxd. One, I'm going to edit this a little bit. Helen Hayes, back off my 6'3" man with your short blank. Loving Gary Cooper is a tall people only event! ! My favorite review is the top one. This was 2.5 stars. This was not me. They said, tag yourself, I'm the guy who kept calling Gary Cooper baby.
Oh, that's something I didn't even get a chance to talk about. I think that this is a really interesting film to look at through a queer lens, because there is the potential there of Rinaldi being very, very romantically or sexually interested in Frederick.
Yep. Well, that would make sense why when he first not meets Frederick, but when we first are introduced to the two of them together, Frederick's taking his shirt off.
Yeah.
Because they're in the washroom.
Yep.
He's washing his face. And then later on, that would explain him keeping the letters.
Yes.
Of being vindictive.
It feels like such a weird motivation for Rinaldi to just be like, oh, you don't need a woman. Focus on the war. If he's trying to get him to focus more on even the bromance of them together, that makes more sense. But I would almost lean towards there being a hidden romantic interest there.
Interesting.
And it kind of makes it a more interesting film for me.
Well, he he initially wants to introduce Gary Cooper into Fergie.
Right.
So maybe there's the whole, he's not going to get along with her.
Yeah.
So I'm intentionally introducing him to someone he's not going to like, because I don't want him with someone he doesn't like.
Yeah.
A lot of that feels more coincidental than anything, but that's
Sure.
a really interesting lens to have.
And I'm sure in 1932, they weren't writing in this queer character or this queer romance or anything like that.
Maybe they were.
And even if they aren't, I think that this does present an opportunity, maybe one of the first examples in the movies we've covered, where you could look at it through that lens and be like, interesting.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating, and I'm glad you also found it interesting, baby.
Well, I mean, look, the minute that Adolf Menjou is saying, baby,
yeah,
I'm sad. I'm listening.
Yeah.
Which is why I should have loved this movie, but I just didn't get into it.
There's always our next Menjou.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's talk about double features.
Totally.
So, incidentally, I have found myself in another pairing, or theme, rather. Last recording session, you saw me pair 2 different movies with 2 different Richard Curtis films. And I did not intentionally do that. Once again, up until right now, I didn't realize that I had done this. I picked another 2013 film.
Okay.
This time, I looked at the relationship between Catherine and Frederick, Helen Hayes and Gary Cooper, and I kind of removed the war from it completely. And one thing that I liked was I liked the idea of an alternative. I liked, obviously the ending of this is Catherine and Frederick unable to be together because Catherine passes. I like the graduate of it. I like the, hey, we got together. What does that actually mean? And what does the future hold for us? And I think a movie that does this perfectly, of talking about we want to be together so badly, but we can't. And what if we could be together? What does forever look like for us? The answer to that is Richard Linklater's 2013 third film in the Before trilogy, which is Before Midnight. This stars Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. And for anyone who's unfamiliar, this is one of the most romantic movies, or at least in movie trilogies, with Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and then, of course, Before Midnight. And I loved this movie because it answered the question of, like, we took the most romantic story that we have seen in a very long time, and we did a follow-up to it. I mean, this was the third, but we did a third movie to it. And what does that look like? And the answer is an imperfect marriage, an imperfect relationship. People who have, like, learned to hate the worst things about each other. And are they a good fit? Is this something we want to see them together for? I thought this was a really nice swerve to the ending of Farewell to Arms. In if they were able to be together, would that actually be a good thing for them? And people trying to keep them apart, people trying to, like, get them together. What does that look like? So I think Before Midnight is a really nice pairing to this in terms of where it could go.
I like it.
Could have gone.
I like it, yeah. I have not seen any of that trilogy yet.
It's really good. Even knowing, like, where that goes ultimately, it's such, like, their connection as actors, Julie and Ethan, were cool like that, is so good.
Yeah, I think that is a big contributor to why I'm not the biggest Ethan Hawke fan. I think it's because I haven't seen that, like, tentpole film in his career.
I would say
trilogy.
I would say it's the Before trilogy.
Yeah.
Before trilogy is probably, I have the criterions if you ever want to borrow them. I would say very easily, if we're doing a Mount Rushmore of Ethan Hawke movies, the Before trilogy is up there.
Yeah, I need to check it out. I've been slacking.
And then Black Phone, and then Black Phone 2. and then Blue Moon.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I'm serious about Before. I was kidding about the other three.
No, for sure. I mean, all I hear is high praise for those movies. So one day. As far as my double feature, there is a very particular sequence in this movie that you talked about a little bit of the tail end of it, and it is the first person point of view of Frederick's character when he's being wheeled into the hospital. And I don't think that this is super effective in this movie. Like, I like it a lot, but as far as it playing a role in the narrative, I don't think it does.
Can I take a guess?
Sure.
In what your pick is?
Sure.
Is it Diving Bell and the Butterfly?
It is not.
Okay.
So he's being wheeled into the hospital, and because he's laying on his cot or whatever, being wheeled in, he's looking up at the ceiling. So you get to see, like, the chandeliers hanging in the hospital. And he makes his way to his bedroom, and that's when you have, like, different actors appearing in the shot looking down at him.
Yes.
So you'll see the doctor's faces, the nurses' faces, and ultimately Helen Hayes coming in to give him a kiss. And you get this almost, like, uncomfortably close image of her face right in the camera. And you're almost thinking, oh, he's going to have suffered some injuries that are like superficial injuries messing with his face. That doesn't turn out to be true, which is why I think this is kind of ineffective. Where it is effective is in my double feature pick, Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, yeah. Great.
That is an iconic sequence in that movie where he is being wheeled through this nightmarish hospital. And there's, like, metal gratings above the ceiling, and there's bandaged figures, like, crawling around on the ceiling above him. Very much like a horror story. I thought, like, oh, maybe I'm just taking this one shot and saying that'll be my double feature.
No.
But I think there's a lot in that film. There's a lot in that film, a story of a man who suffered from war and is now, like, trying to navigate his life back home. And there's a lot of complications with his love interest. And again, it does take more of a horror turn, but I think there's, like, there are things in this man's life and in his psyche that are kind of pulling him away from the thing that he really desires, which is just peace and a normal life. And that might be a little bit more of an obscure example of that than Farewell to Arms is. But in a way, they're both also kind of like, hey, these are the bad things that can come from war. So because of that shot and then those kind of loose themes, that's what led to that double feature.
That's great. No, I don't think that there's anything wrong in seeing like that one scene and then taking the interpretation and moving forward. If anything, I think that's exactly what I did with this. And you look at the final scene and you're like, well, what if they could be together? And you start theorizing about what a movie looks like that does that. So no, I think that's a fantastic idea. I also love the idea of a horror paired with this.
Yeah, there's no lizard tail in A Farewell to Arms, so you don't have that connection.
If it was, it would definitely be with Rinaldi, right? Rinaldi would have a lizard tail.
Hey, baby, how you like this lizard tail? But yeah, that's Farewell to Arms. So, like you said, Farewell to Arms available as a Kino Lorber print, probably the best way to watch this film if you can. Next episode, we will be covering Cavalcade, the 1933 Frank Lloyd film. Oh, we're headed into 33.
Nice.
New year, new me, baby. This right now looks like you can rent it video on demand, and it might be available on... No, it's video on demand.
It's video on demand, so anywhere that you can rent your films streaming, you can do so. About $3-4 that you can rent this.
Yeah, so I guess I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. I looked at the synopsis and I'm like...
I've heard some unfortunate things,
but
so we'll see.
I guess we'll see. If you have thoughts about A Farewell to Arms, shoot us an email at outAopodcast@gmail.com. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/outAopodcast. Anything you would like to add? Closing notes?
Nope.
Perfect.
All good.
Thank you guys for listening. As always, I'm Kyle.
I'm Ryan.
And we'll see you at the movies.